coming. I'm just getting the title all nice and lovely. And we're going to, so I believe you all are seeing me right now on Facebook, because this is intriguing the way this goes through the Zoom platform to Facebook, when actually on Facebook you're getting me. So this is why I'm talking now before I start. Okay, so welcome to today. Today is January 14th, Monday, and this is this week's Women of Sales and Influence coming to you live. And I have a fabulous, wonderful guest. I am just, week after week, I just feel so honored and blessed to have these amazing women coming onto you and sharing with you the power and the possibility of stepping into your sales and influence. And this week, this woman comes from Microsoft, and Rakhi Voria, if I said that correct, Voria, pronounce it correctly. So I had that moment where all of a sudden I froze, and then instead of saying it correct, my mind just froze up. So again, remember, this is you getting to see what we do and how we do and still shine well. She is the senior, see, I'm just having that moment all of a sudden. I'm freezing up. Apologies.
Don't worry.
It is such a Monday, and this has never happened to me. She is the senior business manager at Microsoft. Oh my goodness, really, Michelle? And she's going to be sharing with us how to stay authentic, and how to empower that for your selling so that you can really step into your worth and the value of who you are, an incredible woman of sales and influence. So I'm going to allow her to introduce herself, and I'm going to settle in and get ready for an incredible time of sharing. So take the floor. It's just, wow.
Thank you. Thanks so much. It's great to be here. So a little bit about me and my background. 7 years ago, this week, actually, I applied to work at Microsoft, and I didn't apply for a sales job. I applied for a marketing role, actually. I had some marketing and advertising experience in the past, and so I thought that would be a logical path for me to get into Microsoft. But when I met with the recruiter, she said, "You're not a marketer, you're a seller." She said, "You're a great communicator. You've demonstrated a track record of success. You listen intently. You have an ability to make people trust you. And all of those things would make you a really good fit for sales." And when she said that, I think I had basically like a visceral reaction, and I thought of a used car salesman, and I just hadn't really considered sales as a viable or a worthwhile career path, frankly. I mean, I had really preconceived notions about what the profession entailed. I thought it'd be really masculine. I thought it'd be competitive. I had seen some job descriptions that used words like hungry and hunter and competitive, and some of them even said, we're looking for people with a competitive sports background. And I thought to myself, okay, well, then that's definitely not me. But ultimately, the recruiter at the time basically kind of forced me into the sales queue. And I wanted to work at Microsoft so badly that I just sort of went with it. And I ended up landing a sales job at the company, and I absolutely loved it. And, unbeknownst to me at the time, the recruiter was right. I was actually really good at sales. I exceeded my target. I was learning some really tangible skills. Let's face it, a sales paycheck can be really nice, and it can be a lot of fun too, because there's so much variety. So that was about 7 years ago. Since then, I've stayed connected into the sales world. I did a stint in business development, supporting a financing sales team. And then most recently, I helped Microsoft build a new digital sales force as the chief of staff to our corporate vice president for inside sales. So when I joined that team, I was one of the first employees. Now we have 2,000 sellers globally, and we've built this team in under 3 years. And I've helped with everything from writing some of our first job descriptions for our sellers, to hiring them, to providing input into the trainings, tools, processes, all of those things that they need to be successful. And it was a great way for me to kind of take all of my experiences as a seller and apply them to more of a corporate role, and help set the strategy for what it takes to build a brand new high-performing sales force. And I share all of that because I think it's important to showcase that sales can translate into a variety of things. I mean, I started in sales, but as you heard, I've had a variety of different roles over the past few years, but sales has been kind of the common thread or function throughout it all. And you can be in a direct sales role engaging with customers, or You can be maybe more on the corporate side where you're helping to support sellers. And so there's so many different paths that you can take. And that's why I'm such an advocate for getting women into sales today.
This is absolutely amazing, and I thank you for sharing what you just shared, and you're speaking just such a beautiful language about how sales can catapult your career. And one of the things that I hear so often is why women, especially stay away from sales, is they don't want to be seen as pushy.
Yeah.
Right. And there's nothing pushy about you. You're actually, you're so at ease at who you are. And I could tell that anywhere you go, you're incredibly approachable. I'd love for you to share what does it mean to be a woman of sales and influence, and an example of how you've utilized your skill set in sales to traverse your career so far.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think being a woman of influence is all about not being afraid to push the boundaries and not being afraid to push people toward what you think is right. And I guess an example is that's sort of what I try to do around the topic of getting more women into sales in general. I mean, I've always had a lot of passion around advancing women in business and technology. Grew up with a single mom, two older sisters. That really kind of fueled my passion around that. Currently co-chairing the Women at Microsoft group. And so I'm always thinking about how we can attract and retain and advance women at the company and in general. And so, as I mentioned, we were growing the Microsoft inside sales team from essentially nothing to 2,000 people. And as part of that, there was a period where we were really struggling to get women into some of our open sales roles. And we would look at our hiring statistics week over week, and they just weren't really getting better. And we were sort of thinking to ourselves, there's got to be a reason. There's no shortage of really talented women out there who could be very successful in sales, but for some reason, they're not applying. They're not applying for the open roles. So we've got to be really intentional about where we're trying to recruit them. We need to go find them. We maybe need to redline the verbiage in our job descriptions, make sure that our hiring processes are inclusive. And so those are all of the things that we did, but that experience really sparked my interest in the topic, because I feel like over the years we've heard so much about getting women into STEM because they've had, historically low representation of females, but for some reason we rarely hear about getting more women into sales, even though there's some really, really important information about that. And I thought, okay, well, maybe I'm going to do some research about this based on what I was seeing in Microsoft Inside Sales and the struggle that we were having. And as I started doing the research, I was kind of disheartened to see that there really wasn't that much research to begin with. There isn't a ton of statistics around women in sales. And I thought, okay, well, maybe this is my opportunity to be a woman of influence and draw light to a really important topic and maybe write an article about it, because I write articles for Forbes. And so I was able to get a little bit of data, and, there was a study by LinkedIn that said that women represent only 39% of the workforce in sales. The percentage has only gone up by 3% over the past decade. Obviously, the higher up you get in an organization, the lower the numbers get. So at the most senior levels, only 21% of VPs of sales are women. And so clearly there is some data, although minimal, that shows that there are some issues, and that we have a big opportunity to shed light into this, which is why I love that you have a series specifically focused on women in sales. But since then, I've written a few articles on why we need more women in sales, why women should consider roles in sales. I've spoken on this topic at a variety of different conferences and podcasts and things. And some of the responses that I've received have been just so overwhelming. I mean, young girls who are applying for their very first internships who say, wow, I would have never thought of sales. I always thought that that's something that you do only if you're a man. Or some single moms who have reached out who are trying to make ends meet, who say, I never really considered sales as a lucrative path for me and my family. And so it brings me a lot of joy, I guess, that I've been able to be a source of influence in that space, because as I said, I myself fell into sales because of a recruiter. So sometimes you just sort of need someone out there to help influence your path. And I think that's what it really is and what it means to be a woman of influence.
And I thank you so much for, taking that posture and that position, because that's how I actually found you. I read your article on LinkedIn and loved the article so much that I reached out to you. And that's how we ended up here on this, having this conversation today. And so, and again, as you said, there are so many opportunities for women to step into that space, and not just for income, because it is a great way to increase and impact your income, but it's absolutely a wonderful way to move about in career development, right? There's something in corporate, and especially in that corporate realm, there's such a respect for people coming from the sales force, right? So to speak, the quote, carry the bag, as the term is that. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about how having had that sales background worked so well in your career development. Was there any specific place you knew that because I was in sales, this has helped me? Or it was just the ability to have a conversation and be more comfortable and confident because you were in sales? Just love for you to expand on that a little.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think there are just so many tangible things that you get from sales. So as you said, I mean, it's such a transferable profession. I mean, I can't tell you the number of times people from our marketing teams reach out and say, hey, we want to hire your sellers for our marketing roles, because they're the ones who have had firsthand experience from our customers. They see what campaigns are working, what's not. And so it's really good job security, frankly, because you have that firsthand perspective. You get a chance to be in front of our customers, delight our customers. But some of the other things is, you know, I mean, I think it teaches you a lot around just communicating effectively and negotiating and doing it in a respectful way. And, you know, one of the reasons why I was so averse to going into sales is because I thought you had to have a certain persona in order to be successful. But there are a lot of statistics around there about how women are actually have tendencies that make them a really natural fit for sales, like the fact that we aren't aggressive. And I would sort of compare my style to some of my male peers when I was in my sales role. And sometimes we would say the exact same thing to the customer, and I was able to get through to them and they weren't, just because of style. Because you know, I think women tend to listen more versus speak, and we don't necessarily pitch right away. We like to listen, digest, we display a lot of empathy. And so those types of things, I think, around communication have really served me well as I've sort of progressed in my career. I think negotiation is all about just sort of really understanding what a person needs. And I just learned so much around how to do that. That's really trickled throughout my career as I've had to influence stakeholders in other roles.
Absolutely. I love that. The fact that you're talking about the empathy. I personally remember being in pharmaceuticals, and I always say at the end of every transaction is a human who seeks interaction. So I look to interact with people way more on the front end before I even think about attempting to offer them a product or a service. So I love that you said that. And it has helped because that listening doesn't just stop in sales, that you carry it into other aspects of your life and throughout your career. You know, once you create the habit of listening, it goes with you wherever you go. So that's absolutely incredible. I wanted to ask you, like, for someone who is thinking about sales, right? And they're in a space where it's something they always wanted to do, or they're even nervous. What advice would you give them? Like, I think about my younger self. The way I ended up in sales was I took a Briggs Meyer or something similar. So for some reason my phone is giving me an Amber Alert. Isn't that lovely? Of course it does, right? And what would you tell younger self who is hesitant, or the younger version, a young lady listening now, or even someone who is thinking about, man, you know, I always wanted to go into sales, and having heard this today, I want to take that chance. What would you tell them would be a great first step to prepare themselves for that journey?
A great first step. Well, first of all, I would say you just have to apply, right? I mean, so many times we hold ourselves back, but I think, you know, people tend to say, well, if I haven't hit all of the check marks on the job description, I shouldn't apply. But the reality is, I mean, so much of your previous background can be applied to sales. And so women in particular, I mean, there's, you know, that famous HP study that people always talk about. Women only tend to apply for jobs if they hit, you know, 100% out out of the job requirements, whereas men apply if they've only hit a few of them or whatever. And so, first of all, I think just encouraging yourself to even apply and really thinking about the things in your background that could apply to sales. So as an example, I never really thought I had real sales experience. And when I was in college, I had a work study internship where after class, I would go, and in order to make a little bit more money, I would sit in the alumni department and I would make phone calls to people and I would ask them if they'd be interested in making a donation to the college. And I never thought about it as sales. But it was fundraising. I mean, it was inside sales. I was essentially a telesales agent. I just never thought about it because I didn't have a quota. But all of those things, that you've done in the past, I'm sure at some point you've had to influence or sell something. Let's face it, we're always selling, whether it's a job interview or convincing someone to go on a vacation with you or convincing someone to go on a date with you. I mean, everything is sales. So think through some of those professional examples that you could leverage as you kind of go through the interview process and whatnot.
No, that's absolutely wonderful. I don't know where I've heard this phrase before, but it's that at every conversation, the person who's the most confident is actually the one that's convincing the other person of the outcome, right? So like you just said, we're always selling. Like if you're a wife, you've got a husband who has a honeydew, you got kids who need to clean their rooms, right? So there's always this conversation. You have a girlfriend, you want to go to see this movie, she wants to see the other one. So there's always a sale. It's just a conversation where at the end there's a result, right? And both parties are hopefully in agreement. So, but thank you for that.
The other thing that I would share with people is I'd really encourage people who are considering a sales role to try to shadow somebody who's in the profession. I don't think it really matters what industry, but I think there's a lot of beauty in really sitting down with somebody and understanding what sales looks like, and maybe, saying, hey, I'm exploring a career in sales, would love to sit down with you, shadow you for a day, maybe listen in on some calls, because I think you'd be surprised how much time sellers actually spend really strategizing and thinking about all of the different components of what they're going to talk about. I mean, there's a lot of beauty in really sitting down with somebody and understanding what a typical day looks like, because as I said, I think people have these opinions that it's just, sitting at your desk, cold calling one after another, or going knocking on people's doors one after another. And sales as a function has really evolved. I can't speak to every company, but at Microsoft in particular, I mean, we've invested so much in digital marketing and digital selling techniques that our sellers are never cold calling. Basically, anytime they reach out to a customer, they have so much insight into what the customer already wants. They know, has the customer downloaded a white paper? Did they go to an industry event? Are they participating in a trial? All of these things really help you have the right insights to be able to have a more meaningful conversation with the customer. So the profession has evolved so much that I think people probably don't even really know what sales is today. So I'd encourage you to spend some time with people who are in sales before you make that leap.
That's a great bit of advice. And there's so many places that you can go online. And depending on where you are, just reach out. I always tell people, one of the things that National Association of Sales Professionals, we have a member, and it's complimentary. There's no charge for it. And currently, for the limited time, we offer our new members a strategy session, a sales strategy session. So if you're listening to this and like you hear, if it's something you want to have a conversation about, I'd say join and schedule your strategy session while we have them available. So thank you for that. Now, I wanted to know, do you have any current offers or upcoming events that you could share with us for Microsoft, or the Women of Sales, or Microsoft itself?
Yeah, well, I will be happy and delighted to give an offer to this group in particular. So anyone who happens to be watching, I am a huge fan of just sort of giving more than you receive, and mentorship and everything. As I think about my career path and my life in general, everything that I've essentially ever been able to achieve has been thanks to the support of others. So I love the phrase lift while you climb. And so one of the things that I would like to offer to your viewers is I would be happy to do kind of a a 1 hour career coaching session with someone. So for those of you who are interested, maybe send me a tweet online and then we'll put you all into a raffle and we'll pick one of you and we'll do a 60-minute career coaching session with anyone who wants to chat with me.
Oh, that is absolutely, oh, I'm even surprised. See, I love what my guests.
So basically, just go on to Twitter or LinkedIn and find me. You can search for my name, or my Twitter handle is @Rakhi Voria, and just say that you tuned into today's Women of Sales and Influence series, and that you'd like to be considered for the raffle. And hopefully, you'll be chatting with one of you guys soon.
Oh, that's awesome! Thank you so much for giving that. This is. These are those opportunities that come, not that often in a lifetime. So if you're listening, you definitely want to go start tweeting her right now. Don't wait, because when you wait, you forget and something else comes up. We know how the day goes. So go and tweet right now. And as how to get in touch with you is the same way we use your social media channels. Is your name at in all your social media channels?
Yes, best way to connect with me is probably, Twitter or LinkedIn. So you can just search for my name on there. Obviously, you can follow me and my Forbes article. So if you go to Forbes.com, you can search for me there. But yeah, I think that's a great
article.
Always happy to connect with other amazing women doing great things. So would love to.
Absolutely. And as we wrap up, I always like every guest on the show to share, that pearl of wisdom, like that one thing that, as a woman of sales and influence, or a woman desiring to up level or upgrade her sales and influence, that you would just leave them with, that it would resonate in them and they would really be able to implement immediately.
Yes, I would say be yourself and believe in yourself. I don't think I came up with that myself. I have no idea who did, but I've heard it. And it's kind of my mantra and something that I've adopted. I think it's a simple thing that you can remember. But for me, I think a lot about leadership. And I think part of that is just being who you are and believing in yourself and emphasizing the qualities that make you unique. I can't tell you how many times people have told me, you're younger, maybe you should hide your age to gain credibility, or, you're working in a very male-dominated industry, technology, act like a man so that you can gain credibility. All of these types of things. And even if people don't use those exact words, and hopefully they're not, because it's 2019, there are things that people say regularly that sort of make you realize, oh, that's what people are telling me to do. But I would just encourage everybody who's listening to never feel like you have to hide any of those qualities. And in fact, I think you should use them to try to drive actionable change. That's what I've always done. As I said, in sales, as an example, I've been able to use the fact that I'm a woman and have some of those natural strengths to be able to influence some of my customers and whatnot. But as someone who's a millennial and relatively newer to the workforce, I've been able to use that to offer a fresh perspective and look at things differently and influence the business differently. And so I would just encourage people, whatever those things are that make you unique, whether it's somebody who wants to go in sales, who has never worked in sales in the past. All of those things are actually strengths, because you're going to bring just a different skill set and background to anything that you want to tackle. Don't be afraid to really leverage those things that make you unique, and be yourself and believe in yourself.
Oh, God, that was just so beautiful. What a beautiful way to end. And one thing I love that unique, and I tell people all the time, sometimes people hear unique and they're like, well, I'm not unique. Unique, the synonym for unique is weird. If you feel weird, you are unique. That makes you awesome. That means you're different, and there's something incredible about you and your gift. So thank you for pointing that out. And we look forward to seeing and hearing from all the viewers and listeners about your absolute wonderful gifts, and tweet so that you can get that opportunity to have that strategy session. And finally, just remember, this is Michelle Baker, the Women of Sales and Influence platform. It's sponsored by the National Association of Sales Professionals. And we have great opportunities as well. As we currently, for women members of the National Association of Sales Professionals, there is a private Facebook group. So I look forward to seeing you all there. And then we'll maybe get an opportunity to have our guests back, and maybe she'll do a session in there later in the year. I know she's a busy woman, but later in the year. So we'll try to work that out. But thank you guys for viewing today. We look forward to your feedback, and I look forward to seeing you next week as well. Thank you so much. And I'm going to sign off. Stay there while I sign off.